Okay, good evening, everybody. Before I begin, I will ask everyone to please silence cell phones and other electronic devices and remind council their procedure bylaw prescribes the use of technology during council meetings. It is 6:31 p.m. I'll call this council meeting to order. And as I do, I will note that land acknowledgement is an act that predates European settlement and was an opportunity for visiting Indigenous nations to acknowledge the land that they were visiting and seeking opportunities on. In Brighton, we acknowledge that we are meeting this evening on territory that is the traditional territory of the Mississauga Anishinaabe, now of Alderville. We are grateful for the opportunities that the lands and waters that we now know as Brighton provides for us and work to set policies that will help us work to be better stewards of this place. We are grateful to Indigenous neighbors who continue to work to make this place sustainable for all creation. I have a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that Council approve the May 19th, 2026 Council agenda as presented. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Being none opposed, that motion is carried. I will note that Councillor Butwell has sent regrets for this evening's meeting. Members of Council, have you any declarations of interest? And if so, please state the general nature thereof. There are none noted. Are there any announcements this evening? Councillor Rowley.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to publicly recognize that this is National Public Works Week. And so I would like to give a shout out to Director Lennon and all of his staff, those that we see in the ditches and on the roads. It's been a tough winter and it's going to be a hot summer for them. So just want to wish them all well.
Thank you for that. Any other announcements? I have a couple. The Saturday before last, Mistral Developments opened their community garden, which is available to anyone in Brighton, and Councillor Wheeldon and I were present for that launch. Last Monday, the Trent Memorial Hospital Auxiliary held their AGM in Brighton, and I was able to bring greetings from council and the community and congratulations on their 75th anniversary. Last Thursday, Big Brothers Big Sisters held their Bowl for Kids' Sake fundraiser, and thanks to Councillor Rowley for organizing the council team, and thanks to Councillors McCausland, Wheeldon, and Rowley for representing. I know that Councillor Wright and I were able to pop in for a supportive role, but neither of us could bowl that evening for various reasons. I'd also take the opportunity to note that staff and our volunteer firefighters also had teams that evening helping with Big Brothers and Big Sisters. And yesterday, Councillor Rowley and I were able to attend at Bob Burke's 90th birthday. Bob is a former library board chair, among other things, including his involvement with the National Air Force Museum of Canada, and of course, his career serving Queen and Country in the Royal Canadian Air Force. Finally, the chief let me know today that we are compliant with the 2025 emergency management audit, checking all 13 boxes there, and we appreciate the nearly $50,000 from Emergency Preparedness Ontario for which we've put toward emergency equipment for the fire team. And also being Public Works Week, it's also Paramedic Week, so we offer our paramedics our support and our thanks for all the work they do across Northumberland County and here in Brighton. Last chance for announcements. Moving on to adoption of the minutes, I have a motion moved by Councillor McCausland, seconded by Councillor Wheeldon. The Council adopt both the May 4th, 2026 Council and May 11th, 2026 Council Planning Meeting minutes as presented. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. We have no statutory public meeting this evening, which brings us to delegations. I will note for everyone's sake, the air conditioning is not working in the building, so you'll see we have a ton of fans going for the purposes of the fact that summer all of a sudden dropped on us. And although we are expecting a little cooler weather coming up, this chamber is notoriously weird with temperature. So without the fans, we'd all be boiling over here. So let's move into delegations. We have one delegation this evening. Delegates have 10 minutes to provide council with their information. It is noted that language, content, and conduct must always remain respectful. Council will be provided with an opportunity to ask questions of clarification from the delegation representative based on the information that they have presented. Council is reminded that this is not an opportunity to engage in debate with the delegate nor advance a public policy position. Delegates are reminded that council does not make decisions during the delegation portion of this evening's meeting. Our delegation comes from Ralph Torrie, Blue Dot Northumberland. And Mr. Torrie, I'll ask you to approach and provide us with your information, sir. And welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for welcoming us here this evening. My name is Ralph Torrie. I'm here on behalf of Blue Dot Northumberland, which is a group of local residents who dedicated to the preservation of agricultural land and, in general, the health of our local environment. Some of us, like me, were born here. Others have chosen to make this their home because of the cost of living or the quality of life or the quiet beauty of the natural environment or the character of the communities. And we're concerned. We're concerned about the proposal from Ontario Power Generation to build the largest nuclear power plant in the world here in our county. And our concerns fall into four broad areas: the socio-economic risks of a mega project of this scale in this county, the health, safety, and security implications of this particular project, the failure to properly examine alternatives and actual need, and the fact that this proposal locks Ontario into an outdated, highly centralized electricity model at a time when energy systems around the world are becoming more distributed, flexible, and renewable. What is being proposed for Wesleyville would be the largest nuclear station in the world, yet there is no confirmed reactor design and no publicly released cost estimate. Based on comparable projects internationally, the likely cost will be well above $200 billion and could approach $300 billion. Nobody knows. It will be on us, though, to pick that tab up. Private capital doesn't risk its money on these plants, and for a good reason. But beyond the headline number, projects of this scale create major local economic disruption. Thousands of highly paid construction workers enter a relatively small regional economy, create boom and bust pressures that can permanently damage existing communities and businesses. Housing prices and rents rise, local employers lose workers, roads, water systems, healthcare, policing, and social services all come under pressure. For many residents, the first visible impacts will not be economic opportunity, but traffic congestion, rising housing costs, and pressure on community infrastructure. And when construction eventually winds down, many of those jobs disappear as quickly as they arrived, leaving communities with overbuilt infrastructure, economic instability, and social division. There are also serious nuclear-specific concerns. A plant this large would produce enormous quantities of high-level radioactive waste. Once the fuel is removed from the reactor, it remains intensely radioactive and continues generating heat. It must be stored under active cooling for years before it can be transferred to a permanent repository, which we don't yet have in Canada. If when we do get that repository, the waste would still remain at the reactor sites for many years. It's just too hot to move. We have nearly 3.5 million of these spent fuel bundles currently sitting in temporary storage at the surface at Ontario's nuclear stations, and it will take years to move it, a logistical challenge that we are leaving to our children and our grandchildren. There are also accident risks which would be foolish to ignore. They are statistically unlikely, but they carry potentially catastrophic consequences. These high consequence accidents have been a concern from the outset of the nuclear enterprise because the plants contain enormous quantities of highly radioactive fuel exposed to very high temperatures, very high pressures, and massive volumes of water moving at very high speeds through the reactor core. What could go wrong? Even after the nuclear chain reaction is stopped, the fuel continues generating dangerous amounts of heat for weeks and must be actively cooled for years. Failures in cooling systems can lead to fuel melting, hydrogen explosions, and the release of radioactive material into the environment. The odds of this happening were supposed to be 10 million to 1. I know because I worked in this field when I was a young physicist. And yet, with only 450 reactors in the world, we've already had 4 such accidents. These are low probability but high consequence events, and they deserve a rigorous public scrutiny, especially in a region with farms, orchards, conservation lands, and thousands of residents nearby. Recent research has also renewed concerns about long-term public health impacts associated with living near large nuclear facilities. Whether one accepts those findings or not, they reinforce the need for precaution, transparency, and independent review. Security concerns are also increasingly important. A nuclear complex of this scale becomes critical infrastructure and a potential target for future cyber or geopolitical conflicts. We saw this already just this week in the UAE. The enriched uranium technology being considered would also require permanent armed security operations and heavily protected transport of sensitive materials through the regions. Most importantly, the Federal Impact Assessment Act requires that the need for a project and the alternatives to it be properly evaluated, and yet OPG has explicitly stated that it is not considering alternatives. This is unacceptable. For a project of this scale and consequence, to railroad it through, that's madness. Before Northumberland County is asked to shoulder these risks, there must be a transparent examination of whether this project is actually needed and whether alternatives, including conservation, renewables, storage, smarter grids, and smaller scale solutions, could achieve the same objectives at lower costs and lower risks. Blue Dot Northumberland is therefore asking Council to support these 3 recommendations. First, that the Impact Assessment Agency require OPG to return with a properly scoped project description that fully examines the need for and alternatives of this station. Secondly, that more time be provided for public consultation and education on the financial, environmental, health, and security implications of the proposal. There are very worrying signs that normal public participation procedures are going to be short-circuited in this as this project moves forward with its application. And finally, that Northumberland County, not just Port Hope, be formally recognized as the host community, because the impacts of this project would extend throughout the entire region, including Brighton. This proposal would irreversibly reshape Northumberland County. And for generations, decisions of this magnitude require transparency, rigorous analysis, and meaningful public participation before the process moves any further. Again, thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to field any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Torrie. I will open the floor to members of council who have questions of clarification for the delegate. Councilor Wright?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Are you aware of any options that they would have to generate electricity on this kind of scale outside of nuclear?
The direction that the electricity systems around the world are heading toward is a combination of renewable sources, so wind and solar, combined with backup storage from batteries. Electric vehicles in the long run will be part of the storage solution, combined with a small amount of like 5% of the total that can come from natural gas or some other dispatchable source to get you through those periods that happen now and then when the wind stops and the sun isn't out and it's cold. So you have, but nuclear doesn't work well for those periods either. It really only works well when it's on and left on all the time. So yes, in fact, there are scenario and alternative analyses for how you can provide for even a doubling of electricity consumption, which is what we could be facing in Ontario. If we electrify our buildings and we electrify our road transportation system, our electricity consumption will double. It's not going to come from hydro. It actually can't come from nuclear. Some of it can, but even the most ambitious nuclear scenario that would include this station and the expansion at Bruce and all of the rebuilds still falls far short of what would be required if we double our electricity consumption. So we need the renewables. It's the only other way to avoid greenhouse gas emissions in the expansion of the system. And in a northern country like Canada, that means wind more than solar, because the very time of year when you want to be heating those buildings is when the sun isn't shining. And so you'll see in Scandinavia and other Northern European countries have the same issue. To make the transition towards a renewable-based grid is going to, the heavy lifting will be done by wind turbines. If you combine it, I know I go on, sorry, but one more small point. If you combine the expansion of the wind power with another key component of where Canada needs to go with its electricity system, which is to connect across the provinces, then number one, it greatly reduces the amount of wind that everybody needs to build, because you can be sharing the wind when it's blowing in one part of the country and not another, and so on. And number two, you can put the windmills along the transmission line where they're out of sight. So there's a whole new vision of where the electricity system is headed that is gaining momentum at the very time that this somewhat anachronistic technology in the form of nuclear power is being proposed on such a large scale for Northumberland County. I'm worried if they started building it, it would never be finished. And we've seen that before here in Northumberland County.
Thank you both. Councillor Whelan.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Torrie, you talked quite a bit about the economic impacts of a large centralized project like this. If the alternative for energy generation is renewables, what does the economic impact of that look like?
The economic impact of renewables, because they're more distributed, distributes the benefits, distributes the employment, distributes the risks of failure. Everything gets distributed in a way that improves the benefits and decreases the risk. The jobs that get created per $1 million of investment, which is the standard metric that economists use when they're evaluating the employment multiplier, as they call it, of capital investment. The industry that has the lowest number of jobs per $1 million of investment is the large power plant industry. It's highly capital intensive. The jobs are great. That's part of the problem for Northumberland County, because the hydro workers are going to be making twice the county average. And it's very disruptive, and it'll cause a lot of tension. So it's the jobs that get created from renewables. The job creation multipliers, as they're called, are much more. They're very similar to the construction industry, the residential construction industry multipliers, or the general construction industry multipliers, where you get much more labor per $1 million invested than you do in these big central plants with their incredibly expensive capital components, which in many cases come from far away.
Thank you both. Any other questions of clarification from the delegate? Thank you, Mr. Torrie.
Thank you very much.
I have a motion moved by Councillor McCausland, seconded by Councillor Wheeldon, that Council receive the delegation from Ralph Torrie, Blue Dot Northumberland, regarding the proposed new nuclear plant at Wesleyville. Is there any discussion? Councillor Wheeldon.
Thank you, Mayor. We don't seem to have a motion later on the agenda to support these things in any practical way. Usually we do an advocacy motion by sending a letter or something like that. Is that something we would like to talk about?
So we really shouldn't be making any of those kinds of decisions out of a delegation. Usually we would see a piece of correspondence later, but what we could do is refer this to staff for a report, and we can have a conversation with staff of what that should look like. It really should just be this information coming back to us with the recommendations, but
yeah,
we can have that conversation.
Thank you. I just wanted to flag that it wasn't on the agenda.
As the mover, Councillor McCausland, are you agreeable to adding and refer to staff for a report? As a seconder, I assume you're okay with that, Councillor Wheeldon? So I have added and refer to staff for report with the okay by the mover and the seconder. Any further discussion on the motion? Those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion is carried. Thank you, Mr. Torrie, for your delegation. We appreciate it very much. Madam Clerk, are there any citizens' comments this evening? None. Thank you. That brings us to staff reports. The first report is Ontario Underground Infrastructure Mapping Strategy. Mr. Gooding is the author. Director Lennon, do you have anything to add or highlight?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just quickly that since council received the correspondence from Ontario One Call in February, staff had engaged with them on several email questions and answers. And we certainly support endorsing the project. It should have a lot of benefits. There's just still a lot of unknowns, and just staff wanted to highlight that there are concerns about potential impacts for additional equipment, survey equipment, staffing, potentially, again, unknown, but we haven't been able to get that clarity to date.
Thank you for that. I have a motion moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Rowley. The council endorsed the intent of the Ontario Underground Infrastructure Mapping Strategy as a long-term initiative to improve underground infrastructure coordination and reduce excavation risk. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Next report is truck traffic on Telephone Road. Director Lennon, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And again, just quickly, staff have done a lot of work to determine what could be done. Although the recommendation is not to install the no heavy truck signs at this time, it's certainly something that could be looked at in the future. Wanted to highlight that the MTO did move the large EDR sign at the off-ramp, and I think will have a major impact on reducing truck traffic on those roads. And just even today, we get clarity from the county that there's additional EDR signs being installed on county roads to kind of direct traffic past lower tier roads to keep trucks and vehicles on the planned EDR routes.
Thank you for that. I have a motion moved by Councillor McCausland, seconded by Councillor Wheeldon, that council receive the report on no heavy truck signs on Telephone Road for information, and that council direct staff to continue to monitor the traffic along emergency detour routes, specifically during Highway 401 closures, and report back to council as necessary. Is there any discussion? Councillor Wheeldon.
Thank you, Mayor. Question for Director Lennon. The report mentioned the need to coordinate with CRAMI. Are we coordinating with CRAMI?
Director Lennon?
Through you, yes, I did meet with staff at CRAMI Township, and they I did mention in the report briefly that they would like to look at alternative methods. They have reasoning. So that discussion did take place. And because we essentially share that road, we should be coordinating our efforts in this regard.
Thank you both for that. Anything further on the motion? Those in favor? Being none opposed, that motion is carried. The next report is the deferred report, the Rural Advisory Committee recommendation town hall meeting. We've already had information from the clerk. Madam Clerk, do you have anything to add or highlight before I move on?
Not at the.
Thank you. I have two motions. One is to receive the report and then another to provide direction to staff. So the first is moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor McCausland, that council receive the staff report regarding the recommendation from the Rural Advisory Committee for a town hall meeting. Is there any discussion on that? There's another motion. I'll read that if that's what you were going to comment on. Yeah, okay. All those in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion is carried. And a motion moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor McCausland. Be it resolved that council instructs staff to develop a framework for a series of informational town halls to be conducted in each of Brighton's rural communities, specifically Orland, Presqu'île, Smithfield, Hilton, and Codrington. The framework report is to be presented for review and approval by the current council no later than the end of June 22nd, 2026. The objective of these town halls is to furnish residents with a structured and informative platform to articulate concerns, provide input on their localized requirements, and pose questions to a maximum of 3 rotating council members in collaboration with planning and public works personnel. This initiative acknowledges potential perceptions of oversight in rural areas and aims to ensure equitable engagement. Staff are to subsequently submit a proposed schedule and format for these sessions, including appropriate venues that are conveniently located for residents within their respective areas. These meetings are to be scheduled in July and/or August 2026 with the current council before the October 2026 election, and a report of summary and potential actions to new council members post-election 2026. Discussion. Councillor McCausland.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. I just kind of wanted to highlight that the Rural Advisory Committee really hopes that this is able to happen before a new term. And they do wish that it would be in a central area, so it's accessible for all. I did mention that we would probably want to have it in all areas to make it accessible for all residents, especially in the rural. But they wanted to have it in one spot, so it was available for everyone and everyone was able to come. And I know that they also wanted to have it done before next term because of the survey that they did put out, and that the survey would then be years old once it is done with or dealt with the next term.
Thank you for that. I appreciate those concerns. If they're concerned about a centralized spot, we're here. This would be a good centralized spot in the municipality of Brighton. I understand that because of the rural nature of certain places in the community, they would like us to take the, I'm going to be glib, to take the show on the road, so to speak, and go up to Codrington. I assume that's the centralized location they're thinking about, but not necessarily. Although it is an accessible spot. The survey, can you elaborate on this survey that was taken? And I think I read about it in minutes at one point, but
I believe all of the responses came back to council. It was in regards to communication and how they felt, I think, within the rural boundary of the community.
Very well. So that was included in minutes of their committee. Okay. I have some more questions, but I'll open the floor. Go ahead, Councillor Wright.
I'd be happy to change that motion to just read the King Edward Gibbs Center. Sorry, my brain's not is half asleep in this heat. Just to make it more essential if they're not unhappy about that, so that we don't have to do 5 or 6, we can do just 1. And it could move along that much faster for them.
So I appreciate that, but I think the whole purpose is to take us to the rural area. That's how I understood the wish, but maybe I'm misreading the wish.
In discussing back and forth with Hannah tonight and speaking with Anne, that didn't seem to be an issue. They seemed to be quite happy to come to one spot where they could ask us the questions that they want to ask us.
So perhaps we could write itinerant information town halls in a centralized location, and staff can provide us with what that looks like.
What that looks
Is that
like.
fair?
Yep.
As mover and seconder, I'm going to make that change.
Yep.
Any further discussion? Go ahead, Councillor Wheeldon.
Thank you, Mayor. This does bring up for me some questions about our proceedings here. As you mentioned, this is a central location where we meet regularly and our meetings are open to the public. We have opportunity for citizens' comments at every council meeting. We have question period at every council meeting. We have a rural committee specifically for the purpose of hearing from rural residents and having them forward recommendations to council. And so I'm wondering what about our processes is so inaccessible? And I'm wondering, is there something we need to change about the way that we operate, or is there need for education to residents about how council works and how welcome they are here? We sometimes joke about our small crowds here, but we do know that people watch online. And I know that not everybody has high-speed internet yet. That's a county issue that we continue to advocate for. But I don't know. Are we doing something wrong?
Councillor Rowley has the answer.
No, I do not. No, I do not have the answer, but I do concur with Councillor Wilden on many of those points. I find it, we're 4 years into this term. This is the first we're hearing of it. I know Councillor Ferretis and I sat on the first two, on the first 2 years of this term, and thought we had made a little bit of progress. I know rural broadband is always going to be an issue until all of that is solved. Like I said, I would be open to one meeting and just having concerns brought, but at this late stage in this term, I don't think we can solve anything at this stage right now anyway. So one central meeting, maybe, but that's as far as I'm willing to go, having realized the historicals over the years, you as well, Mayor, that it usually ends up being crickets with this group all across, not just in Codrington, not just anywhere, but we've tried going to them and it really hasn't really solved anything. So one meeting maybe, but I think sooner than later, I don't want it to drag on till the end of this.
Thank you for that. I've never had an issue hearing from members of the rural community when there's a concern. They have no problem picking up the phone or sending an email, broadband being an issue regardless, which, by the way, should be rolled out by the end of 2026, with the exception of very few homes in the municipality, which will have to be on phase 2. County continues to deal with funding issues for phase 2, but that's another story. The rural broadband initiative that was initiated should be rolled out entirely by the end of this year. I do have concerns about doing something like this during the election period, which of course has already begun, and that it will appear to be campaigning. I also think that if we're going to do town halls, we don't limit it to 3 councillors. We have everyone in the room. And we have guideposts around what is and what is not a meeting. So we would not call a meeting to order. But we could all be, anybody who's available and wants to be, could all be in the room. But I would be reticent to have staff provide a policy that has us in the middle of an election suddenly hosting these town halls. I think the optics are bad. I think the opportunity for campaigning and electioneering, regardless of those guideposts, exists. And I have no doubt that if we hold one in July and August, we will get a ton of people out. Most of them will be on the ballot because they'll see it as an opportunity to campaign. And I frankly don't want to be quasi chairing a meeting when I'm trying to make sure that everyone's being heard and not at the same time, so to speak, if you know what I mean. So those are my concerns. I have no issue saying to staff, let's have the policy in front of us so that we can say yes for the future council. But I think it is, to Councillor Rowley's point, too little too late for this term of council. Go ahead, Councillor Wilden.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, if we were to go ahead with one at this time, I wouldn't attend. I've been told off before. For somebody asked me for a sign one Sunday at the market during the last election campaign, and I was told off for campaigning at market. So I'm very conscious that campaign season puts different goggles on people's eyes. And I don't want to be open to not only accusation, but also the temptation of campaigning or electioneering at a public event. We have a policy that would not allow me to book the Codrington Community Center to have a session of my own in which I would listen to rural residents to hear their concerns as part of an election campaign. If I were to do the same thing, to go to a town hall, it would be effectively the same thing, except it would be on the public dime. And so I would have to exclude myself as a conflict of interest, I think, even if it's not a formal meeting.
Thank you for that. Further discussion. Go ahead, Councilor Wright. You had your hand up.
I get the concerns. I think if it's made clear at the start of the meeting that there is no campaigning, there will be no handing out of signs. Don't ask us for signs. We're not making any decisions. We're gathering information, and a report will summarize and go back to the next council. I think those are parameters I could live with.
I understand what you're saying. The assumption is that there's grown-ups in the room, and I get that.
Yeah,
Having been in a number of municipal election campaigns, I can
Yeah.
assure you there's not always grown-ups in the room,
yeah, I'm sure.
regardless of the age of the people.
Yeah.
Anything further from members of council? Go ahead, Councilor Routley.
So the Rural Advisory Committee has the opportunity to bring a delegation here. Could we invite them to, if they have concerns, they could bring it here during a council meeting? And do we listen to that? Listen to their concerns as to why they really do need a town hall.
Councilor Wilden?
My understanding is that some of the concerns are just that the matters that were identified in the survey have not, that were flagged as areas of concern have not necessarily been corrected or implemented yet. And so perhaps even just a staff report on what was requested and where it's at could be.
Well, I don't remember receiving a recommendation from that committee on any implementation measures.
No, and I think this is where I feel like maybe there's a breakdown of understanding of what needs to happen. We got the survey, and I think there was probably an expectation. My sense is that there was an expectation from rural residents that having identified areas of concern, that they would then be addressed. And having had no recommendations come forward from the committee, we haven't done anything. Which is not to say that we haven't done, our staff haven't done anything, but just that we haven't been talking about it. And so nobody really knows if anything has come out of that survey. Is that the sense?
So my feeling on that is, we received the survey. It was informational. The committee that created the survey should then take that information, digest it, and bring recommendations to council. That's, as you know, the whole purpose of an advisory committee is to provide advice to council so that we can take action. So I'm a little concerned that maybe there's a breakdown in process here and a heightened expectation because of a breakdown in process that maybe the committee members aren't even aware of. So perhaps we need a moment of education for our committees, and maybe again, it's a little too late in the term for that, but still in all, I think our next step would be to ask them to provide some recommendations around that survey, and then we can take actions on them. Or we could create a policy to have town halls, either way. And or we could create policies to have town halls. Go ahead, Councilor Wheeler.
Yeah, to that point, again, I'm not against town halls in principle, but if the request for a town hall meeting has not come to me with any other content to it about why is it needed, and other than reference to the survey. And so if that's the actual concern, then maybe referring this matter to the committee to make recommendations to council in relation to the outcomes of the survey, saying, please tell us what exactly it is you want, and then we can still do that before the end of the term. If we wait until we have a town hall and then hear from them and then get a report back and then try and implement it, by that point, we're probably into lame duck anyway. I think if we go straight to the, please at your next meeting, give us recommendations, we can probably actually get something done.
I would agree. Anything further on the motion? Sure can. It's moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor McCausland. Be it resolved that council instructs staff to develop a framework for a series of itinerant informational town halls to be conducted in a centralized location. The framework report is to be presented for review and approval by the current council no later than the end of June 22nd, 2026. The objective of these town halls is to furnish residents with a structured and informative platform to articulate concerns, provide input on their localized requirements, and pose questions to a maximum of 3 rotating council members in collaboration with planning and public works personnel. This initiative acknowledges potential perceptions of oversight in rural areas and aims to ensure equitable engagement. Staff are to subsequently submit a proposed schedule and format for these sessions, including appropriate venues that are conveniently located for residents within their respective areas. These meetings are to be scheduled in July and/or August 2026, with the current council before the October 2026 election, and a report of summary and potential actions to new council members post-election 2026. Councillor Wright.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor McCausland, do you think that asking them to create recommendations would solve this? Or do you think we need to go this town hall route?
Councillor McCausland.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to Councillor Wright. I think that maybe there was, like you said, we need to have some educational sessions when it comes to committees and advising. I think if we take all of the responses from the survey at the advisory committee, we could definitely get some solution from those points brought to, but I think they would really still like a town hall. If we could get everything together from the survey and get responses on that, and then maybe advocate for a town hall in the next term, that might be something that they would probably be more appealing to, I guess would be more appealing to them. I'm not too sure, but that's kind of where my mind would go with sitting on the committee and talking to them. They would really appreciate the town hall, but from the conversations that we have, I do think that if we took the responses from the survey, then we could get some more movement out of it, for sure.
Okay, so. But we're missing a step really, right? Because they need to make the recommendations. It can't just come from a survey. We can't just.
After we deal with this, we could put another motion on the floor, providing direction to the Rural Advisory Committee to provide us
Okay.
with some recommendations coming out of the survey.
Okay,
And then it
Okay,
would be formalized that council's making this request.
right. So if we defeat this and then put the motion on the floor to do that. All right,
That's fine. Or you
Yeah.
can withdraw your motion.
withdraw the motion. Make it easy.
I want to make it clear, I'm not opposed to town halls. I think it's a good idea, and I think we should probably set a policy around it at some point. And maybe we can provide direction quickly in another motion, but for now, let's offer direction to the Rural Advisory Committee. Councilor McCausland, what was that survey called? Deputy Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was actually just looking at it. It was called the Brighton Rural Resident Survey.
So if it's agreeable, I need a mover and seconder that council direct the Rural Advisory Committee to provide recommendations for council's consideration based on the Brighton Rural Residents Survey. Well, we could just vote. Motion moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor McCausland. Any further discussion on this motion? Those in favor? Being unopposed, that motion is carried. Do we want to provide direction to staff with regard to town halls? Or do we want to hang tight on that? Councillor Wheeldon.
Thank you, Mayor. Given that they are not part of our procedural bylaw and given the, I think, fairly significant shift, I mean, I'm still stuck on this idea of what are we doing wrong? I work pretty hard to try and get feedback from residents and generally get none. And so the idea that people are feeling unheard makes me wonder if I smell, to be a little bit glib. And so the idea of setting up a whole other structure that would require several staff members to set up additional meetings at significant expense when we generally have nobody here and very rarely have citizen comments. I can count citizens' comments from this term on two hands. I'm unsure that I want to support that.
You know as well as I do that if people don't feel that we're appropriately engaging with them, then that truth resonates with them, whether or not we can say we meet 3 times a month and you're welcome to come anytime, et cetera, et cetera. So I really do feel that at least in the next term of council, we should endeavor to engage in this way, or the new council should endeavor to engage in this way, depending on who's around the table. But I think we should set that policy for them. They can always adjust the policy if they don't like it, or rescind it if they really don't like it.
I am open to that. I will say only in response that we've all been watching the Prime Minister attempt to appease Albertans, and it's not going well. At a certain point, I feel like there's only so much you can do.
Councillor Wright.
Thank you. In all my years of customer service, whether it's in retail or at a healthcare level, the thing that makes people the happiest is to know that they've been heard. And it's not necessarily something that we're doing wrong, but we're obviously not meeting them where they're at in some capacity. So if there's a policy that could be set where town halls can happen between year 1 and year 3, and they have to meet some certain criteria to make them happen, then let's do that. If it helps people who don't feel heard, that's only a good thing in my books.
Councillor Rowley.
Thank you. I kind of sort of agree with Councillor Wright on that. I think just passing the previous motion does that as well, to say that we haven't just dropped the Rural Advisory Committee's request. I don't know if it needs to be as formal as a town hall where everybody can line up and we can just have like an open house type thing. Not everybody wants to jump up and explain or gripe about their concerns publicly, but if we just had, a meet and greet, and we do that once or twice a year without having a real big policy around how rules of engagement have to go in these kind of things. I think something less formal might be just as welcome.
So I agree with you. These rural town halls could just be open houses, but we would need rules around them if more than 3 members of council show up. Or if 2 members of council show up and you end up discussing municipal business and somehow advancing that municipal business down the road, you are now engaging in an inappropriate meeting of council. So we have to have guidelines around this if we're going to do it. Anytime the bunch of us get together, whether it's standing in the parking lot at Sobeys or here formally, if people think we're advancing business, then we are. That's the reality. And if they can prove that we're doing it outside of these meetings, then we're in trouble. And we should, and we know that. I floated a potential motion around this afternoon, and I'll read that. If someone wants to jump on it, we can go down that road. The motion would read that council direct staff to initiate rural town hall meetings as an informal, non-statutory engagement process to be scheduled in the next term of council, and following the completion of the current priority workload and subject to staff capacity, and that such rural town hall meetings be designed to serve as informational and educational sessions for residents regarding municipal services, processes, and responsibilities, provide an opportunity for listening and information sharing rather than decision-making, be held in more than one rural location to improve accessibility and participation, and ensure matters raised are documented and referred through appropriate municipal processes for follow-up. And further, that staff report back to council with a proposed policy, schedule, format, and locations for these rural town hall meetings to be set for the next term of council. Councillor Wheeldon.
I'll move that.
Is there a seconder? Moved by Councillor Wheeldon, seconded by Councillor Wright. Do you need me to read it again? All those in favor? Are there any opposed? That motion is carried. All righty. Thank you, everyone. Good discussion. The next report is the ban policy update, Hydro One occupancy and use agreement. Madam Clerk, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Thank you, Mayor, but not.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor McCausland, seconded by Councillor Wheeldon, that council receive the staff report CLK 2026-22 as an update regarding banner policy, and that council authorize the municipality to enter into an agreement with Hydro One Networks, Inc. for the licensed occupancy and use of Hydro One owned power utility distribution poles for the existing banner brackets owned by the DBIA. And further, that council direct the downtown business improvement area to develop a banner policy with staff assistance to govern the approval, installation, maintenance, and removal of banners using DBIA owned hardware in alignment with the terms. Is there any discussion? Councillor Wright.
Through you, I'm not sure who to direct it to, but will this at all impede Brian Todd from putting up their banners? No?
I think this helps it. I think this
Good.
is what gets that down the road.
Yeah, no, good.
yeah.
I just wanted to have it said out loud.
Yeah. Councillor Rowley. Your Mayor Mike. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. And to be clear, DBIA will be working with the municipality to make sure that policy is set as per municipal policies
Excellent.
so that we stay in.
How many times can we say policy in this meeting? We should have policy. We do have policy meetings. Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. The next report is vendor fees for community events in municipal parks. Madam Clerk, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Thank you, Mayor, but this time.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that council receive the staff report CLK 2026-67 and approve the waiver of vendor-related fees for the current event season for community-hosted events that have historically taken place in municipal parks and facilities, and further that council directs staff to develop a consolidated policy outlining requirements, roles, and expectations for community events hosted in municipal parks and facilities that include vendors to ensure consistency and clarity for future events. Is there any discussion? Councillor Wright.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm just a little concerned that we're going to end up charging vendor fees for events that are largely nonprofit in nature. Other than maybe covering insurance or making sure that they already have insurance to cover that.
Right now, we have a peddler's fee,
Right.
and this is intended to waive that for this year
Right.
for those already existing, because we've had a number of organizations suggest that it's too costly.
Right,
That,
good.
that every
Yeah.
little organization that comes and helps put up their booth and their tent, and we add $250 to that, and now it's nobody's making any money.
That's right.
And nobody's, and we have vendors in our community that already pay significant taxes, who are volunteering their time at these events to support them. So I think this is a good and right thing to do, and we should codify it in some sort of policy. So that's the other portion of the direction.
Good, okay.
Go ahead, Councillor Wright. Another policy, that's right.
Yeah, another
Yeah.
policy. I had something that I wanted to talk to about the banner thing that I just remembered. I know we passed it.
Well-
But
Let's get through this and then I'll
Okay.
circle back to the banner thing.
right, yeah, okay, so I'm good with this one as well. I wait to see what the new policy says before we decide where it's gonna go. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, can we have an example of the kinds of events we're talking about in the community? I just want to make sure we're capturing a few that I've heard.
Well, some of the events that people were told that to pay offenders fee was community events that DBIA might host or the parks, that kind of, right?
And there's,
I keep flashing.
it's okay, there's one hosted by the local veterinary clinic called Pawpalooza. Would that be captured in this as well? So we'd be
Yeah.
excluding them from our fees and charges bylaw for this particular year until we figure out the policy. Okay, perfect. Anything further from members of council? All right, I have to secure the motions because of the fan behind me. All those in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. Next report is a CAO ongoing report and capital projects update. CAO, we've read the report. Do you have anything to add or highlight? Oh. I said I wouldn't forget and then I did. Councilor Rowley on banners. You're welcome.
Thank you. And it's not the banners, but I guess I have a question around the 4x4s that we have at the entrances. There's one in Memorial Park that also the DBIA looks after, where we put the, right now there's a quilting show and the ones coming on in the entrances. Is that something that would fall under this policy as well? Like, do we have to deal with those as well, or this is just the Hydra one? So those other ones are still just under the control, I guess, for lack of a better word, the DBIA. You're not concerned about them.
Do you know what we're on about? There's 4x4 iron frames.
Yeah.
Am I describing that right? At the entrances to the municipality, there's one in Memorial Park and the sign can go in and out of them.
Yeah.
Right now, the DBIA has.
Well, the quilters have an upcoming show in a couple of weeks, so they're in there.
But who manages them? Is it the
DBIA.
DBIA?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, it's.
Yeah, we look after everything.
It's a loosey-goosey agreement. So,
Through you, Mr. Mayor, certainly the banner policy does not address that, so that would continue as is unless staff was directed to look at an alternative option.
but today it ain't broke, so we won't try to fix it. And now we move on to the CAO ongoing report, capital projects update, CAO.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, I have nothing to add.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councilor Rowley, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that council receive the CAO ongoing report and capital projects update. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. We have no notices of motion or motions listed. We have nothing listed under unfinished business, which brings us to bylaws. The only bylaw is the tax rates for 2026, moved by Councilor Rowley, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that council gives a bylaw. Its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw to provide for the adoption of tax rates for 2026 and to further provide for the penalty and interest in default of payment thereof. Is there any discussion? These, of course, are the tax rates we set at the budget time. All those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. Moving on to reports and minutes of advisory committees of council and review teams. Several listed here. The first is the Recreation Facility Advisory Committee of February. Councilor Rowley, anything to add or highlight?
No, not at this time, but we're getting close to making a presentation at some point.
Thank you. Community Events and Awards Steering Committee, Councilors Rowley and McCausland, anything to add here? No. Applefest, Councilors Wright and Rowley, anything to add or highlight? No. Rural Advisory, Councilors Butwell and McCausland, I think we've gone through that one, thank you. Justice, Equity, Diversity and Inclusion, Councilors Butwell and Wilden, anything to add, Jeff? Oh, the recommendation?
Excuse me, I do have a question
Go ahead.
for Councillor Wielden. I noticed that as an advisory committee, you have a significant budget that you spend. Since when? Not all advisory committees have a budget other than just meeting and honorariums. I'm just wondering I guess I missed how that came together.
Councillor Wielden.
Sure. We have, I think our total budget for the year is $6,000, and that includes all honorariums. It includes possibilities for training as well, if people want to go to conferences or things like that. So far, nobody has. The only money that we've ever spent aside from honorariums is when local groups that are forwarding justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion in the community ask us for a few $100 for punch and pie for their events. And so in the past, we have supported Pie Day and Pop-Up Pride and the Pride Walk from Trinity St. Andrews. And this year we will be doing the same.
But you're asking for t-shirts.
The t-shirts were, that idea came from staff because we were representing the Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee as the official welcomers at Apple Fest. And we were going around handing out things for the Global Eats passports. And so we thought it would be nice if we had something that identified us. I got to wear my council polo, but the other members of the committee had nothing to identify them. And so Caroline has given us some designs for potential t-shirts that now align with the new logo. And it was recommended that we pick a logo and get the t-shirt printed so that at the next Apple Fest, when we're handing stuff out, we look official instead of like wild strangers.
Sounds good.
I don't know what the problem is with wild strangers, but all right. I have a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that council receive the following committee meeting minutes as presented: Recreation Facility Advisory Committee, February 18th, 2026, Community Events and Awards Steering Committee, April 14th, 2026, and Draft, May 12th, 2026, Apple Fest Steering Committee, April 15th, 2026, Rural Advisory Committee, February 25th, 2026, Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Advisory Committee, March 12th, 2026. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Being none opposed, that motion is carried. And we'll move on to the recommendation from the Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee. It's moved by Councillor McCausland, seconded by Councillor Wielden, that council supports the recommendation for the Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Advisory Committee regarding a Pride flag raising event on Monday, June 1st, 2026 at 10 a.m. And that council directs staff to arrange an event for the Pride flag to be raised at the Municipal Center on June 1st, 2026 at 10 a.m. And that staff be directed to support the communication of this event. Is there any discussion? Can we push it to 11? I have a 10 o'clock.
I think we can probably manage that.
Are you okay as the mover, Councillor McCausland, if we change the time to 11 and as the seconder?
Yeah.
Thank you. And I appreciate the motion and the support, and note that we have been raising the Pride flag in Brighton ever since I entered the mayor's office. So we will continue to do so happily. Is there any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. We have no reports or minutes of statutory committees, boards, or external agencies, which brings us to correspondence, direction, items, endorsements, communications, and petitions. The first comes from the Brighton Public School Parent Council seeking support for the basketball revitalization. It's moved by Councillor McCausland, seconded by Councillor Wielden, that council support the request of $6,861.55 to aid in the completion of the Brighton Public School basketball court. Is there any discussion? Councillor McCausland.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, I'm very happy to support this. I just want to know where the money will be coming from.
Mr. Treasurer, what is your recommendation? And we'll add it to the motion.
I can make a recommendation that it could come from the Youth Initiative Fund. I think that aligns with the purpose of that fund, and there would be sufficient balance in that reserve.
So I will add, if it's okay with the mover and seconder, that monies be withdrawn from the Youth Initiative Fund. I would also like to add a line in here that staff be directed to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the Board of Education. It's something we've done every time we have donated monies for these purposes to ensure that the good people of Brighton have access to those facilities when school is not in session. We did it with the with the Thompson Todd track, and we've done it with the Smithfield Public School. I think it would be appropriate to continue to do so, just as a formal agreement that we have use of the facility that we're providing money for. If that's okay with the mover and seconder, I'll add that as well. I've added, and that this be funded from the Youth Initiative Fund, and that staff are directed to negotiate a memorandum of understanding for use of the basketball courts with the Pine Ridge District School Board. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Those in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. And the next is correspondence from Nancy Anderson with regard to a community bulletin board. I have a motion moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Rowley, that council support the correspondence from Nancy Anderson regarding community bulletin board in Smithfield. Questions or comments from members of council? Councillor Wright.
It just makes sense to me to shift it to where the church is. So it's not directly in front of people's houses, but where the community actually gathers. That makes sense to me.
It currently is in front of post boxes where the community is going every day, not just on Sunday. And in front of a pathway to the public school where the residents go to use their park. I'm not sure how many people gather at the United Church at the end of the day. Director Lennon, this is being installed on municipal property, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Through you, Mayor.
Councillor Rowley?
Does it need to be 40 by 80? That's significant. That's 3.5 feet by almost 7 feet. That's a pretty big structure.
Director Lennon?
If I could, I might defer to Manager Hagerman, who's been designing the size and what the content of those boards.
Mr. Hagerman?
Through you, your worship, the sign's there to promote anything going on in the municipality of Brighton. Staff thought it was a optimal location given the foot traffic that frequents that location on a daily basis. The size, go too small and lose the purpose of the size, which would be to post lots of content because there's lots going on in Brighton. I guess, yeah, that's all I have on that.
I'm going to circle back to the question, which was, does it have to be 40 by 80?
I believe it's 40 by 60.
Thank you. Can you,
I'd have to double
can you
check that.
confirm that?
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Wheeldon.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to point out that these signs, the other one has just been installed downtown. It looks great. These signs were a recommendation of the Brighton Homelessness Task Force as a place to post information about access to services for those in need. And it also doubles if there's additional space on it as a place to have information about what's going on in the community, et cetera. And so it does serve good dual purpose. But this is something that we asked for explicitly.
And provided direction by council to do so. Go ahead, CAO.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. And maybe Manager Hagerman can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the signs are to mirror each other, the same information. Therefore, they were designed to be similar in size. I did take a drive by and I don't know whether there has been any conversation about potentially lowering the sign. If the writer has any thoughts about being able to bring it down a little bit so the view isn't blocked, potentially we could do that. In chatting with Manager Hagerman, there really isn't a suitable spot in Smithfield other than that particular location. So I think if we're not going to put it there, we'll have to seek an alternative spot within the municipality, potentially Codrington or something alternative.
Thank you for that. You may. You have to use your microphone.
Could the Anderson speak to you regarding the situation? Right now, it's only about five feet from my house where I live. I live right in front and it's right there. The post, they're planning to put it there. There's no reason to put it there for us. I can see moving it a block over, a few blocks over to another location, but it's sitting there right into, I can reach into every morning about 5 minutes from my house. It doesn't make sense to put it there and there's no decision there.
The Director of Public Works did suggest tree plantings if that would be acceptable as a possible facade, but you would like it moved entirely, is that correct? You want it moved?
But what there?
Want the sign? You don't want the sign?
No, they can be easily moved. I think it's just a simple post that can be lifted out of there. I know it can, but there's other locations. It might even be on the somebody like to speak to their election there. Down on the south side of the street down there. We have a park down there. We have a spot park area that we can move all that to where other park people go.
It uses the park, so I mean, this is being put. People visit every day so that they can see what's going on.
But
Not create a spot where people would have to go to find. We're trying to meet people where they are, but objective. Mrs. Anderson speak. No, Mrs. Anderson.
Nancy Anderson. And do you want the address or?
We have your address, 898 Smith Street.
That's right. So we have a parkette in Brighton and currently the Heritage Advisory Committee has had a plaque ready to be placed at the parkette. It's vital to the just how Smithfield came to be is around this creek. So that was found to be the optimal area to put it in. The reason that I'm objecting to a billboard being put on my front, like right within my eyesight on my front porch, and my neighbor across the road, she's looking out onto a billboard. And I don't think it's fair, number one, when there are other options. But when school is let out, when it's let out in June, there'll be 2 months, nobody is going to use that. Nobody uses that walkway other than a couple of little kids going up to the school to play basketball or ball. This is not something that's
vital to what's going on in Smithfield. The United Church traditionally has been a spot where, and they do have a board there. And, you know, they have notices there as well. I understand you do want to put municipal events going on, and most people, particularly the parents of schools, are very familiar with going online, so that's not an issue. There's one set of community boxes there at that end of the street, and there's another two. One at the Walt Street Smith, and one just down the road past the church. So I really think that, and the municipality maintains that parquet too. It's very nice, and you say it's not used, but that area where you're proposing to put a billboard is not used either. We maintain that. Yes, it is municipal property. It's a little strip of grass medium that we maintain.
Thank you, Mrs. Anderson.
Thank you.
Councillor Wheeldon.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a few thoughts. My first thought is that the intent of this from the task force was to provide information for people who are in need, and those people are generally not in Smithfield. And so there's less purpose for having it there. On the other hand, the purpose of keeping people engaged with what's happening in our community has already been a major topic of conversation this evening. And so having it as a notice board for municipal information in an era when otherwise people rely on Facebook seems wise to me, and having it at a place that people go anyway to get their mail. Prior to having our post downtown, the entrance to Lola's and the entrance to the post office were the two places that people would post things. So we know that people go to get their mail, and that's where they see things. So I'm less concerned about this from the task force's perspective, and I kind of want to remove that from this conversation. I still think that it's wise to have one, and as the CAO said, there isn't necessarily another place that makes sense in Smithfield. On the other hand, I'm honestly, and sorry to say, but I'm concerned about the perception that we would be changing direction at the behest of the deputy mayor and his spouse. I feel like this is something that maybe a recusal was needed.
I think that's a fair comment. I am considering my thoughts on informal United Church, and sorry, staff, I know that's going to be a bit of a pain, but the United Church is actually, although on a Sunday it gets the same X number of people out, but it is sort of the town hall, the Smithfield town hall, if you will. And community events do happen there. And if there's a group in Smithfield that would have concerns with regard to housing and homelessness issues, it might be those folks at the United Church. So I'm wondering if that wouldn't make more sense to have it there, especially when we hear that there are two other post box areas in Smithfield. So this isn't, I thought everybody was going there, but I'm hearing that there are three different spots where post boxes are. So you're only getting a third of the community engaging there, and young people heading to the Smithfield Public School. I think this needs some thought. I'm not sure we're going to solve it tonight. So I'd like to defer this, or actually I'd like to refer it to staff and have them bring back some recommendations on this. Is that fair? Do we still want to support the correspondence, or should we receive it and refer to staff for a report? So I've circled receive and added and refer to staff for report and recommendations. You okay with that, Councillor Wright as the mover? Councillor Rowley as a seconder? Any further discussion on the motion? Councillor Rowley?
Thank you, Mayor. just trying to remind myself, this came from the homelessness task force, and we're putting this signboard in Smithfield. Are we doing it in any other outlining community in Brighton? Like I'm thinking Gosport or some other places. Is Smithfield just specifically the only one that's been chosen?
The intent will be to over time put them in other communities, but Manager Hagerman, I'll get you to speak to that.
Yeah, through your worship, it was just installed Sobeys wall in between the two benches on Main Street the other day, and the intent was to begin the rural component of these signs with Smithfield this year, and then continue with Gosport and Codrington next year, and that would give a pretty well-rounded opportunity for every part of the municipality to have a communication board.
Thank you. Anything further on the motion? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. Moves us into FYI correspondence. The first comes from Northumberland County with regard to the Alto High-Speed Rail Project. It's moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor Wright. The council received for information the Northumberland County resolution regarding Alto High-Speed Rail Project corridor engagement update and Northumberland County submission. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Being none opposed, that motion is carried. And the Northumberland County updates. It's moved by Councillor McCausland, seconded by Councillor Wheeldon, that council receive the Northumberland County updates for May 11th to 22nd, 2026. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Being none opposed, that motion is carried. Brings us to question period. If there's anyone in the gallery or online that has a question with anything that appeared on tonight's agenda, you may come forward. Question period is an opportunity for members of the public to ask questions about items that appeared on this evening's agenda. Members are asked to state their name for the record before asking their questions. A maximum of 5 minutes is set aside for question period. Language, content, and conduct must remain respectful at all times. Questions will be received and answered by the mayor or by a member of council or staff if designated by the mayor. Sir. There you go.
Okay. Richard Stamplecusk, I'm a resident of Smithfield as well. But the sign should be moved because the church is right there. They do everything for us. You know, it's just mandatory. There's enough problems as it is on that area where the sign is now, is the fact that I'm going to look at it every day. That's one thing. The other thing is the fact that the snow removal comes from down there from that walkway right there where your sign is. That's one reason. The second reason another reason is there's all other kinds of problems. I mean, the sign, there's enough signs in the world. We all look at signs every day. You know, like I don't know, I use the internet every day to read about Brighton. Trust me. You know, there's all kinds of things to read about. I love Brighton, don't get me wrong. But yeah, I just think signing a little bit overkill on signage. Just a tiny bit.
It's not really a question, but we'll take it as information. Thank you.
Yeah, but you know, it's the question is that why can't you put it by the church? Because the church, I belong to the church. And I know that that's where we have everything. Like they have a Christmas party for the kids every year. They have some kind of advisement there. Everybody goes to the church. We all do. That's just my theory.
We've referred it to staff and we'll get a report back on some recommendations.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Have a good day.
Any other people present who have questions with anything that appeared on tonight's agenda? No one online for that purpose? We have no in-camera session. Moves to our confirmatory bylaw. It's moved by Councillor McCausland, seconded by Councillor Wheeldon. The council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Corporation of the Municipality of Brighton Council meeting held on May 19th, 2026. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. The motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that the May 19th council meeting adjourn at 7:54 PM. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. As we leave this place, may our actions reflect well on the community and people that we are elected to represent, and may God save the King.